the Bible. Accepted by many as the unadulterated Word of God, it is filled with accounts of events unlike any we have ever seen during our lifetime. In fact, if someone were to approach you today and tell you that they witnessed an event similar to one of the hundreds of events that we read about in our Bibles, you would probably assume that this person was dropped on their head as an infant more than once, like way more than just once. But when our source for these strange accounts is the Bible, we tend to describe them as miracles. But what if I were to tell you that some of the miracles that we read about in the Bible actually weren't miracles at all? What if the divine interventions we find in the Bible were events rooted in natural phenomena? Could there be a scientific explanation for the extraordinary events that shaped biblical history? Among these mysteries, few are as captivating as the 10 plagues of Egypt. The story, found in the book of Exodus, depicts a series of catastrophic events unleashed by God to compel Pharaoh to release the Israelites from slavery. These plagues, ranging from rivers turning to blood to a deadly plague striking Egypt's firstborn. These aren't just religious allegories. They're deeply intertwined with questions of faith, history, and science. For centuries, believers and skeptics alike have debated. Were these events purely acts of divine power, or could natural processes have been at play? Did the plagues follow a sequence dictated by ecological disasters, climate change, or even volcanic activity? Or is it possible that they were divinely timed natural phenomena used to fulfill a greater purpose? In this video, we'll scrutinize the 10 plagues like you've never seen them scrutinized before, exploring their biblical narrative, uncovering scientific theories, and examining the balance between the natural and the miraculous. This isn't just a journey through ancient texts. It's an exploration of how the divine and the scientific can coexist, providing us with a richer understanding of one of the Bible's most profound stories. So prepare to witness the 10 plagues of Egypt from a perspective that bridges faith and reason. Could these ancient miracles hold secrets, waiting to be uncovered by modern science? Let's find out. The 10 plagues of Egypt are some of the most dramatic and consequential events recorded in the Bible. Found in the book of Exodus, these plagues were divine judgments brought upon Egypt to convince Pharaoh to release the Israelites from slavery. But they weren't just random catastrophes. Each plague was symbolic, targeting the gods and beliefs of the Egyptian people. The story begins with Moses, chosen by God, standing before Pharaoh with a simple demand: "Let my people go." When Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, God unleashed the 10 plagues, each more devastating than the last. These plagues not only demonstrated God's power, but systematically dismantled Egypt's economy, ecology, and religious foundation. Plague 1. Water to blood. The first plague transformed the life-giving waters of the Nile into blood, killing fish and making the water undrinkable. As we turn to science for a reasonable explanation, we learn that a harmful algal bloom, also known as a red tide, could explain this phenomenon. Certain algae species, when present in large quantities, produce toxins that discolor water and deplete oxygen, suffocating aquatic life. Sounds plausible, doesn't it? But there's also the possibility that volcanic activity upstream could have caused iron-rich sediments to flow into the Nile, giving it a blood-red appearance and making the water toxic. Plague 2. Frogs. With the Nile polluted, frogs would have abandoned the water, overrunning Egypt's homes and fields. The toxic conditions in the Nile would force frogs to migrate en masse. This sudden overpopulation would naturally collapse as their food sources dwindled, leading to massive die-offs. This brings us to Plague 3. Gnats. The decomposing fish and frogs would create an ideal breeding grounds for insects like gnats, and these tiny pests would swarm the land, further worsening conditions. The warm and humid conditions which are typical of Egypt would accelerate their population explosion. Plague 4. Flies. Flies swarmed Egypt, spreading disease and discomfort. Similar to gnats, flies thrive in decaying organic matter. The dead fish and frogs would have provided a perfect environment for a fly infestation. Plague 5. Livestock disease. The claim is that a mysterious disease struck Egypt's livestock, crippling agriculture and transportation. The explanation for this is simple. Insects such as flies and gnats could have spread diseases like anthrax or foot and mouth disease to livestock, particularly in unsanitary conditions following the earlier plagues. Plague 6, boils. Painful boils afflicted Egyptians, likely exacerbating existing health crises. Now, the scientific explanation: airborne pathogens or chemical irritants carried by insects could cause skin infections. Additionally, volcanic ash containing harmful chemicals might have triggered these outbreaks. Plague 7. Hail. A hailstorm devastated crops and property. The scientific explanation for this? Well, it could be explained by an unusual weather event, such as a severe thunderstorm combined with a cold front. Large hailstones coupled with lightning would have caused widespread damage. Plague 8. Locusts. Locusts devoured what remained of Egypt's crops. The scientific explanation here is quite interesting. Locust swarms often follow weather changes. The hailstorm may have created humid conditions ideal for locust breeding. Historical records show locust plagues were not uncommon in ancient Egypt. Plague 9. Darkness. Darkness engulfed Egypt for 3 days, a direct challenge to Ra, the sun god. A massive sandstorm known as a khamsin, or volcanic ash from a distant eruption, could obscure the sun for days, creating an eerie and prolonged darkness. Plague 10. Death of the Firstborn. The final plague struck the Firstborn, the most devastating blow to Pharaoh and his people. Contaminated grain, stored low to the ground where the Firstborn typically ate first, might have caused widespread poisoning. Another theory suggests toxic gases released during a volcanic eruption could have selectively affected sleeping patterns, asphyxiating those closest to the ground. One of the most compelling aspects of the 10 plagues is their sequence. Scientists have noted that each event could naturally follow from the previous one, forming a cascading chain reaction. For example, a polluted Nile leads to the migration and death of frogs. Decaying frogs create breeding grounds for gnats and flies. Insects spread diseases to livestock and humans. Crops are destroyed by hail and locusts, compounding food scarcity. This sequence suggests that the plagues may not have been isolated incidents, but a series of interconnected ecological disasters. While these theories provide plausible explanations, they cannot fully account for the precise timing of the events. Take the first plague, the Nile turning to blood. While the Bible describes this as a sudden act of God, science offers a more plausible explanation. A harmful algal bloom known as a red tide could discolor the water, suffocate fish, and render the river undrinkable. Such events, triggered by changes in temperature or water flow, are well documented and don't require divine intervention. As the Nile's ecosystem collapsed, frogs unable to survive in the toxic water fled en masse. This explains the second plague. Their sudden appearance in homes and fields would have been an ecological side effect, not a divine punishment. Similarly, the death of the frogs likely led to an explosion of insects, gnats and flies that thrived in the rotting carcasses, setting the stage for the third and fourth plagues. The fifth plague, the death of livestock, aligns with diseases like anthrax, which insects could have easily spread. Boils afflicting humans and animals could result from airborne pathogens or chemical irritants released by environmental disruptions. The hailstorm, another so-called plague, could be attributed to extreme weather conditions, a sudden clash of warm and cold air leading to severe storms. Locust swarms, often triggered by changes in climate or vegetation, would logically follow the destruction caused by the hail. Darkness over the land for 3 days, described as a divine act, could instead be explained by natural phenomena like a severe sandstorm or volcanic ash cloud. For centuries, the Bible has been regarded by many as a historical and spiritual record. Its story is often taken at face value. The plagues, for example, are presented as direct evidence of divine intervention, a clear demonstration of God's power over both nature and the will of humankind. However, when we consider the plagues as ecological disasters rather than supernatural events, the narrative shifts. The story becomes less about divine punishment and more about human interpretation of catastrophic events. This shift has significant implications. First, it humanizes the text, revealing how ancient people sought to explain the unexplainable. In a world without modern science, a sequence of devastating natural events would understandably be attributed to divine will. This doesn't diminish the cultural or moral lessons of the Exodus story. Instead, it reframes them as reflections of human experience and belief. Second, this perspective highlights the adaptability of religious narratives. The Bible was written and compiled over centuries, influenced by changing political, cultural, and environmental contexts. By understanding how stories like the 10 Plagues were shaped, we gain insight into the minds of the people who told them and the societies they sought to influence. Finally, reinterpreting biblical miracles encourages critical thinking. For skeptics and non-believers, it provides a framework to engage with religious texts without needing to accept their supernatural claims. For believers, it offers an opportunity to see faith and science not as opposing forces, but as complementary ways of understanding the world. Ultimately, viewing the plagues through a scientific lens doesn't strip them of their significance, but the implications extend beyond the plagues themselves. If these stories were natural phenomena reinterpreted as divine acts, what does that say about the rest of the Bible? How much of its content is a reflection of real historical events, and how much has been shaped by the cultural and theological needs of its writers? These are the questions that push us to keep exploring. The 10 Plagues are a window into a past where science and spirituality were intertwined in ways we're still unraveling. They challenge us to think critically, question narratives, and seek understanding, not just of the events themselves, but of the people who lived through them and the beliefs they passed down. So as we conclude this journey through ancient Egypt, we invite you to think beyond the surface of the story. Whether you see the plagues as divine miracles, natural disasters, or something in between, they remain a testament to the enduring power of storytelling and the human desire to make sense of the world. What other biblical events could benefit from a similar exploration? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and join us next time as we continue to examine the intersection of history, science, and the Bible. Before you go, do me a huge favor. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone that you think might benefit.
If you enjoy our content, we'd love your support. By joining one of our channel memberships, you help us continue creating videos like this one while gaining access to some amazing perks. As a member, you'll unlock exclusive content available only to supporters, earn loyalty badges to show off in comments and live chats, and enjoy priority responses to your comments, shoutouts, and more. The best part? Memberships start at just $2.99 a month, less than a cup of coffee. Even small contributions make a big difference for the PJ Bible TV team in covering production costs and delivering the content you love. And if you're not ready to become a channel member today but still want to support us, there are other ways to help. Engaging with our videos is a tremendous way to show your support. By taking just a few moments to like the video, share it with friends, family, or on social media, and leave a comment, you're telling the YouTube algorithm to share our content with more people. Your support, no matter how you choose to show it, means the world to us. Thank you for being part of the PJ Bible TV community.